Hello, this is James from Mode Lighting, and in this video we're going to cover plate subscription. So in front of me right here I'm going to set up two rooms, an A and a B, but there'll only actually be one plate that's going to be controlling both of these rooms. So I want a way of making the plate change function to control the other room. So let's work through that. Okay, so here we are in room A. We can see that we have a single plate, 4 scenes and an off, and then I've got a raise and lower on 5 and 6. I'm going to use one of these buttons to do a sort of a menu change. That's going to be button 10 in a bit. We're going to add in the same now for room B, but that's where we're going to start adding in a new piece of equipment, and that's this slave plate here. So I added it in there, and we can see that it comes in on an address 1000. Now as this is a virtual item, higher address numbers like that will be absolutely fine. And you see I'm going to add the exact same functions now on the same buttons as we did previously. So to make this work, we're going to need to have this plate be able to transition between being this version of itself and a virtual version of itself, and being able to flip-flop between them. So first things we have to do is in the spanner option of this plate, I can click here. This all looks fairly normal, but if we go down here we have got this more option that I can then tick, and then it opens up a few more options in here, and one of them being this allow subscription. So that's going to allow this plate to be able to change dynamically as we need. And then if I hit OK here, now we've got this new extra section has appeared in this upper section here, which we've used before for other things, and that will become in handy for doing this dynamic changing in a bit. And now we need to try and set up a button that's going to do exactly that. So now I can go over to these two tabs and I can select, first of all in here we can see we have two options, off and slave. So for normal mode I want it to be in the off position and just do what it's currently programmed to do. And then for the second one, this sub, I will pick the slave plate. This could have as many options as that you've opened up of slave plates. So whenever these two scenes are now triggered from somewhere, the plate would change to be doing the second room. So I'm going to use button 10 to be doing some of that. So if I was to do this, we know that both these scenes would trigger at once and we would be in an odd position. So I'm going to use a system mode, something we've used before, to actually make some logic for that button to make this a little easier. So I'm going to go find myself a system mode and add one in. And we can literally make sure that this is set off for normal and then on. So we're changing a state of this system mode. We know that will now change when these are triggered, and then I'm going to use those requireds down here to make this work correctly. So we have two scenes now set up that will change between normal and subscription, and we can test this and see how it looks. So now I can go through to the monitor page and we can see this all in action. So here we have our list of all of our scenes. We can see our two plates, obviously only one being the real one, which is the top one here. And we can see that our system mode is off, so this plate should be in normal mode and only triggering the room A scenes. And I can prove that now by start pressing the buttons here. We can see that those scenes are actually triggering correctly. If I then press our button 10 that we set up down here, we can now see that it's gone to subscription and the system mode is turned on. Now when I change that plate, we should see room B is changing. So this is a sort of a dynamic way of doing buttons in this respect, and can give you a lot of options if you need to. And we'll go over some real world examples that would be more useful. Okay, so I've just loaded up a program that shows an example for a fire alarm system. So in this case we have 3 rooms that are all set up, that are working correctly as they should. However, what they do extra and over and above, now that we have plate subscription, is that if I go to this fire alarm section, we can see a little more is going on in here. So yes, so what I have here is I have a fire alarm trigger, and then when that is closed, the lights will go to full in all of those rooms. It also recalls a slave plate that's got no functions on it, but just changes the button colours and has no triggers. And there is another option here within the fire alarm opens of making the plates go back to their normal operation. So down here I can see that I have a slave plate, and there is nowhere in the program where this does anything. This is just going to act as our lockout plate. And if I go into the spanner option here, we can see that I've used the static recall option here. This will basically change each of the buttons to a fixed colour of red. So now let's go through to the monitor page and see how this reacts. So our slave plate exists. It always exists just with those colours on it and has no button functions when any of these are pressed. We can see our plates in the rooms are all in normal operation and working correctly. But if I do trigger our fire alarm here, we will see all of our buttons are now locked out as they are now subscribed to that slave plate that can't do anything. So, and while the fire alarm is going on, the lights are full and no one can accidentally start pressing buttons on the plates. And once the fire alarm clears, we can go back to normal operation and away we go. Let's move on to a more complicated example. So here I've loaded another good use of plate subscription, and we believe this is probably the right way forward for doing partition systems going on. We can see we have room A, room B and room AB, and this is where our subscription plate comes in. So you set up a plate for every room combination, and here in the partition control section we can see that this is the partition triggering open or closed is setting those plates. So this is a very, very tidy way of pulling off a partitioned system, and it's completely scalable for larger combinations. The last example we have here shows a subscription being used to make programming slightly tidier when you have multiple plates controlling one room. So we can see here I have one subscription plate set up for the room, and all the button features and functions have all been set up. And then I have 3 other plates, which are the physical ones that are actually in the room. So 1 by the front door and 2 by the bedsides. And they're all set up to allow for subscription. And then on power up, we can see here there is a scene that is called that just sets those plates to be controlling that particular slave plate. So now if I go through to the monitor page, we can see that all of this is set up, the power up scene is triggered, and these 3 plates are now all controlling that room, but we only had to build the logic for the slave plate. So again, this is another possible use. Thank you for watching the video, and please subscribe to the channel.